tell you that this is the final scheduled forum for the Republican Town Committee here in Newtown, and we are very, very pleased. I am absolutely tickled to let you know that we have the senators, the GOP candidates for the senatorial election in November, vying for the privilege of facing off against Richard, my lawsuit, do create jobs, Blumenthal. From my right, Vincent Forrest, better known as Vinny, Linda McMahon. Peter Schiff is stuck in traffic and will be joining us any moment, and Rod Simmons. Okay? Like I said, one of these candidates is going to face off against Dick Blumenthal in November. The attendees' goal tonight, and that would be those of you out here, get to know the candidates, ask them questions, and get involved. Feel free to engage yourself in their campaigns. Candidates, your goals tonight are to stand out as the person best suited to have the privilege of serving the United States Senate in the Dodd Memorial seat starting in 2011. Communicate your priorities clearly, concisely to our membership. Demonstrate your records of success and earn supporters. The rough agenda for this evening is actually pretty simple. We're going to determine the speaking order by a random selection of ping pong balls numbered 1 through 4. Candidate introductions and remarks will then follow in the order of the ping pong ball draw. We'll limit those to 8 minutes per candidate in the interest of staying on time and on task. Then we'll go to moderator-led question and answer. Questions and answers, though, are not going to be random. Rather, they will be written. So during the candidates' introductions, we will circulate these question request forms, and then they'll be submitted to me, the moderator, and I will organize them by subject and filter out duplicates and questions that may or may not have already been asked, or in the remote possibility there's an inappropriate question, we'll filter that one as well. So that's what's going to happen, and then there will be 2 minutes for concluding comments. As we're running through the Q&A, I will announce, based on the complexity of the question, how long we expect the answer to be, and we will run a rotating order based on the random drawing of the ping pong balls. So everybody will go in ascending sequence during that. And then afterwards we will adjourn. And afterwards we will float into other town committee business, adjourning in favor of a brief forum presentation from Judge of Probate, Judge Daniel O'Grady of Bethel, and then regular town committee business. So the rules are very simple for this evening. This is a forum, not a debate. All comments should be addressed to the attendees and the moderators. Candidates be compelling, but also I urge everybody here to be peaceful. Good for us. Now I'm going to call Peter Schiff, last but certainly not least, and before Peter begins, you can continue to walk yourself up to the front, thank you. If you've got a question form that you want passed over, make it go to your right, and I will collect them.
Thank you.
Mr. Schiff.
Sorry, everybody. I apologize for being late.
You didn't miss much.
Anyway, let me tell you a little bit about me and why I'm running for United States Senate. First of all, I was born in Connecticut, born in New Haven. My father was born in New Haven as well. And my grandfather immigrated to Connecticut just over 100 years ago. He actually worked on building the Yale Bowl. I never run for political office. I'm a businessman. I own a brokerage business that is headquartered in Westport, Connecticut. I reside in Weston, although my ex-wife and my son live here in Newtown. And My business, I started it from scratch. I worked out of a one-bedroom apartment in downtown LA, and as late as 2000, I had only one employee in 2000. Today I have over 100. I have 6 offices. I have over $2 billion in customer accounts. I deal with retail customers, like people in this room. I deal with people's IRAs and their pensions. I also manage money. I have a couple of mutual funds that I run, and I do investment banking. I've also authored 4 books. My most recent book just came out last week. It's called How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes. And my first book actually came out in February of 2007, and it was called Crash Proof: How to Profit from the Coming Economic Collapse. And what's unique about my investment strategy and what really had my focus on politics is that I'm always looking at macroeconomics. I'm looking at how government policy inhibits economic growth, how it undermines economies, and trying to base my investment strategy on my knowledge of economics. And as a result, I've been, certainly for the last 10 years, trying to protect the wealth of my clients from all the foolish policies and destructive policies that have been coming out of Washington. Both the Federal Reserve and what the Fed has done to inflate bubbles and to undermine the value of our money, and what Congress has done with all the rules and the regulations that have undermined and distorted the free market and that have made our businesses, particularly our manufacturing businesses, uncompetitive and unproductive, and have driven capital and jobs out of the country. Well, as an investor, I've been figuring out how to dodge these bullets, but as an American, it's always bothered me. And at this point, the mistakes are now so grave that the threat to our nation is so extreme that I didn't want to just sit back and figure out, how to invest around it. I wanted to see if I can actually go to Washington and put a stop to it. Because the problem is, the financial crisis isn't over. 2008 wasn't the end of it. That was actually the beginning of it. That was just the tip of the iceberg. The real disaster lies ahead. It's going to happen during the term of whoever wins the Senate seat. And what we have to understand is it is not a fault of the free market. It's not capitalism that led to the stock market bubble or the financial crisis that ensued when it burst. Right? When I watch these senators, I don't know how many people are watching these hearings during the day, but they're grilling the guys from Goldman Sachs. And, I've been very critical of Goldman Sachs over the years, but Goldman Sachs didn't inflate the housing bubble. The Federal Reserve did. Congress did. It's the senators that are pointing fingers at Wall Street. They should be looking in the mirror if they want to know why we had a financial crisis. I was one of the few people in my industry that was out there predicting this. I started going on national television in 2005, and I was on every single week from 2005 through 2008 on CNBC, on Bloomberg, on CNN, on Fox, screaming about the incoming financial crisis, about the housing bubble, and about the government's role in inflating it. The reason that so many people took on mortgages that they couldn't afford was because the Fed made money so cheap. The Federal Reserve put interest rates down at 1%. Not the free market. Fannie and Freddie were guaranteeing all the mortgages. That's why creditors didn't care if borrowers could pay back the loans, because the government was going to pay it back. And why were the banks so reckless in the second mortgages and the home equity lines of credit? Because none of the depositors cared what the banks did with their money, because the government insured all the accounts. I'm sure everybody in this room has a bank account. Does anybody in this room ever look at their bank account to see what they're doing with your money, to see what kind of risks they're taking? No. Is there any kind of consumer reports that ranks banks as to which ones are the safest bank to put your money in, that take the least amount of risk? No, because the government took all that out of it. The government created the moral hazard by guaranteeing the accounts. The government created the moral hazard in the real estate market by guaranteeing the mortgages. The government created the bubble. They loved the bubble. It helped get them reelected because the average Americans liked it. They thought they were getting rich without having to work, just watching their houses going up. And of course, now that the bubble bursts, Washington wants to blame somebody else. See, the problem is we have a bunch of people in Washington who don't know anything about economics and who don't really care about what happens to the country. They're not there for the country. They're there for themselves. That's their job. They're politicians. Their job is to get elected. And how do you get elected? You don't get elected by heading off a financial crisis. Nobody wants to rain on the parade. Nobody wants to tell people that they can't get rich quick. What they do is they try to figure out how they can postpone the crisis till after the next election. But whenever they do that, they make it worse. We have to change that. First we inflated the stock market bubble, right? That was because of the cheap money under Alan Greenspan. We had a stock market bubble. We did a lot of foolish things during the NASDAQ bubble. The NASDAQ bubble burst. What did George Bush do when he came into office? Did he say, hey, we got to pay the price for all that craziness? We funded all these crazy dot-com companies and now they're going bankrupt. We're going to have a pretty bad recession. That would have been the honest thing to do. That would have been what would have been good for the economy because we would have reallocated our resources and built the foundation for a real recovery, not the phony recovery that he gave us. Because we got a recovery based on stimulus. What was the stimulus? Slash interest rates to 1% and run up budget deficits. The consequence of that stimulus was the housing bubble. We went on a global spending spree. We spent trillions of dollars that we couldn't afford to buy things we didn't make. And all the politicians said it was great because GDP was going up. Well, the GDP was going up because we were going into debt. We were spending money. It was a fantasy. It was a bubble. And when it burst, and now we have to deal with the consequences of the bursting of a bigger bubble, we have a bigger hangover. What does Barack Obama do? The exact same thing as George Bush. Only worse, right? The only change from the failed policies of the Bush administration is that Barack Obama is repeating the same mistakes on a bigger scale. And now, all the cheap money from the Fed, it's not going in to blow up a bubble in the housing market, it's blowing up a bubble in the government. That's where all the money is going. The government is now growing like a cancer. The federal government next year, fiscal 2011, is going to spend close to $4 trillion. That's more than twice what the government spent 10 years ago. How many people in this room thought the government was spending too much money 10 years ago? Yeah, well, so did I. Now it's twice as much. How can we afford that? How can the economy sustain that? Where is the government going to get $4 trillion a year? It's got to take it out of the private sector. Well, how can businesses grow? How can anybody get capital when the government is taking it all? Right now they're not taking it in taxes. They're taking it by borrowing it. But we got to pay that money back. 30 seconds, time flies. So anyway, let me just cut to the chase. I want to go to Washington and put a stop to this. Right? I'm not. I want to be there for 6 years. I want one term in the United States Senate, and if you give me one term, I will do what I can to put a stop to this. What I want to do is stop the spending dead in its tracks and force government to shrink. That is the only real stimulus that we have in this economy. We need to look for regulations to repeal, for agencies to abolish, for departments to close, for spending to be cut. That's the only real stimulus. I want to go there. You have a lot of politicians that want to talk about a balanced budget amendment. That's great, because you never have to vote on it. Everybody can be for that, because you never have to vote on it. I want to stop the debt ceiling from being raised. And if I can get elected, I will do that, and the deficit spending will stop with me. Thank you.
One more round of applause for all the candidates. Question and answer time begins now. Moderator led, and it's going to go in order as the ping pong balls went. And I will define the approximate amount of time you can spend on it. If you go shorter, that's wonderful. But I'd like to get straight to it because we have about 30 questions and time for about 6 of them. Fortunately, there are many duplicates. Okay, I'm going to start with one that is a simple one. This one, 30 seconds. Where do you stand on the issue of term limits? This is going to begin with Vinnie Forrest.
All right.
Vinnie, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Peter.
Well, I'm obviously for them. I'm going to serve one term myself, but for other politicians, look, I think we should have a citizen legislature. I think people should go to Congress the way they serve on a jury duty or the way they go to the Army. They're there for a tour of duty, and then they leave. I don't want people having politics as a career. I want people from business, from the private sector, going to Washington because they understand, where jobs come from, how businesses are created. And I don't want politicians living in Washington forever, writing rules that they never have to live under. They exempt themselves from all those rules.
Next question. This is also going to be a 20 to 30 second one, a quick one. If you're not chosen at convention, will you primary?
Well, that's been my intention since I got into the race. When I first entered the race, I didn't think that I would, win the convention. So I always figured that it was
more than 20 or 30 seconds. But considering that we haven't had the greatest discipline in keeping to the 30 seconds on the 30, when I say that this needs to be 2 minutes, as difficult an issue as it is, let's try to keep it short. I will be timing.
Get the stop sign.
I'm sorry.
I'll warn you.
I can throw a ping pong ball at you. Okay. How do you feel about cap and trade?
Obviously against it. The last thing we need at this point is more regulation. The economy is already overregulated. We're talking about putting another nail in our economic coffin. And it shows you how clueless a Congress is, that the country is in so much trouble, and they're debating more regulation and more taxes. And the program, the fact is that it doesn't even do anything to reduce the carbon emissions, and they can't even see that. So it shows us how clueless Washington is, that they can be focusing on this, and that's why I want to be in Congress to put our attention where it needs to be on repealing all the regulations that have been so destructive to our economy and have undermined our productivity and competitiveness. Not finding new regulations to make us even less competitive.
Okay. The next question comes from actually 4 different individuals in our crowd. Different ways of asking, what's your position on the immigration issue? And one of them is flavored very nicely and asks particularly what you think about the activities of the state of Arizona. Peter?
Well, I'm obviously opposed to illegal immigration, and I would like to strengthen our borders to cut down on illegal immigration. And one of the ways we can do that, we have so many troops in Western Europe and Japan. I mean, the Cold War's over. We can bring some of those troops to protect our own borders. I do want to make it easier for people to come here legally. I think that immigrants bring a lot of value to this country. If people want to come here and work hard and start businesses, I don't want to keep those people out. But I am very troubled by the law in Arizona. I don't even know how it's going to be enforced. Apparently, the police are supposed to stop and question people if they suspect are here illegally, but they're not allowed to racially profile. So I don't know how you do that. I mean, they're going to have to randomly stop everybody and ask them for their papers and see, are you here legally? What if you are here legally? You just don't happen to have your wallet with you. I mean, I don't want to be in a society where I have to constantly worry about somebody stopping me because they think maybe you're here illegally. And so I feel bad that they're in the situation that they're in, and I don't know how this law can even function. It would be much better if the federal government was doing its job. But in all honesty, we've got an immigration problem now. I'm more afraid of the immigration problem that's going to come in the next few years. If we stay on this path, it's not going to be people coming into the country. A lot of the illegal immigrants are already leaving because there's no jobs here. But pretty soon, it's American citizens who are going to be fleeing. They're going to be fleeing, a weak economy, high taxes, high inflation, high regulation. That's what I'm more concerned about. Our policies chasing Americans out of the country.
Thank you very much. This is an aspirational question. It's one that's been asked at all of our other forums. We're going to begin this one with Peter. What president do you most admire, and why? If we could do this in about 60 seconds or less.
In my lifetime, I guess it would be Ronald Reagan. I think he's the only one that I voted for who won. I did vote Libertarian sometimes. They never But I liked Reagan. I liked everything about him. I mean, the one place he kind of let me down was he let Congress keep on spending. But I think he was a good president nonetheless. So there are a lot of other presidents that I admire, but you have to go way back in time to find them. I think, during my lifetime, I've been very disappointed in the presidents. I was very disappointed in Bush Sr. and Bush Jr. And of course, I wasn't a fan of all of Clinton or Obama. I did very much support Barry Goldwater when I think my first words out of my mouth when I was 10 months old was, voting for Barry Goldwater. So it would have been great if he would have been president. I think my father admired him quite a bit. But I like presidents to understand what the role of government is. That government is a necessary evil. that government isn't the answer to our problems, but the cause of our problems, and that want to minimize the role and intrusion of government into our lives, that believe in sound money and low taxes and low government spending. And I think Reagan did believe in that, and unfortunately he didn't achieve it, but I'm hoping that we can still achieve that. I'm hoping that if I'm in the United States Senate, I can actually force Congress to make the cuts that I know Reagan would have liked to have had made, but unfortunately it didn't happen. Well, if anyone wants to know my old-time favorites, yeah, there.
All right, what we're going to do right now is we're starting.
Oh, first up, Andrew Jackson and Glover Cleveland. But anyway, although I did have that life-size poster of Ronald Reagan on my dorm room as a freshman at UC Berkeley. But, I think it's imperative that I go to Washington. As I said, the real economic crisis isn't our future. The same politicians who told us that the economy was great in 2007, right up until the point where it fell off the edge of a cliff, these are the same people who are telling us that the economy is recovering, that the stimulus has worked, that the bailouts have worked. They haven't. All we're doing is inflating another government bubble. The GDP is only rising because we're going deeper into debt. Americans are spending borrowed money. The government is spending borrowed money. None of that is doing anything to improve the economic fundamentals of our economy. In fact, what the government is doing is preventing the free market from correcting the imbalances in our economy. And the problem is there's not a single U.S. senator that understands economics, or that understands finance, or that understands Wall Street. And given the nature of the crisis that's in front of us, I think somebody there better know what they're doing. And somebody needs to be able to convince our leadership that they're following the wrong advice. They're following guys like Ben Bernanke and Timothy Geithner, who have never gotten anything right in their lives. All of their economic forecasts have been wrong. Yet they continue to be respected on Capitol Hill. We have to have somebody who can show them another way. Show them the error of their ways and get them to stand up for the country. Not to worry about getting reelected, not to worry about what's popular, but what's right and what we need to do and make the hard choices. And they're only hard because politicians are thinking about their own reelection. What we need to do is actually quite simple. And the reason that Washington won't do it is because it interferes with their reelection. And that's why we need to send somebody to Washington that doesn't care about getting reelected. And I think I can get elected. I think I am the best choice to beat Dick Blumenthal. I think I can appeal not only to the Republicans, but to the independents, to the libertarians. I'm not just a party hack. I was critical of the stimulus policies and the bailout policies when George Bush started it. Most Republicans don't have any credibility. They criticize Obama, but where were they when Bush was doing it? I was on CNN almost every week criticizing the bailouts and the stimulus, criticizing all the big spending bills that the Republicans were passing through Congress. So I think people are going to see that I'm a genuine individual. I'm going to criticize the Republican Party when the Republican Party is doing the wrong thing. And we have been doing the wrong thing. I know in our hearts we want small government, but we elect Republicans who are politicians first and Republicans second. They might say they want small government, but what they really want is a big government that keeps them in power. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to let you down. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to especially thank our four candidates for outstanding. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Please take a moment, shake hands. If you need to use the restroom, use the restroom. But we are going to move on to the next portion of the meeting, and that's going to be a presentation from Judge Daniel O'Grady of Bethel. Judge O'Grady, are you with me? Okay, please work your way to the front. And thank you, everybody.
This is my brother Charles.